Nothing will crush a real estate investor's spirit like landlord stress. The difference between being successful and miserable in managing properties is education. Welcome to Landlord University, where landlords learn. Landlord University is recorded from inside the RentPrep office, where Stephen White and Jeff Pearson share the lessons learned from working with some of the most successful landlords.
Welcome to Landlord University Night School. I'm Jeff Pearson, and this is my co-host,
Stephen White.
Hello, Stephen. How are you doing this evening?
Pretty good, Jeff. Going to be talking about something that we touch on pretty regularly here on Landlord University, and that is good customer service as a landlord. And I know this is going to be touchy for some landlords because they don't believe that they're in the business of customer service. They have this sort of an old school mentality that I'm the boss, these are my rules.
Right.
But what we found, and I think you would definitely agree in the conversations we've had, that you attract a lot more bees with with honey than vinegar, right?
Yes.
Your life's a lot easier if you just treat people with that respect and you have that sort of customer service mind. And even if things go south, you still come out as the constant professional, the one who's never changed, never gotten emotionally involved, and had that same even keel attitude. And I think that's super important.
Exactly. The thing that people need to understand and keep in mind is this is a business, and the tenant is your client. And how can you take care of them? And the title of this episode is Customer Service as a Landlord: How Not to Be the Evil Landlord.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many simple things that we can do. And like you said, take the emotion out of it. Deal with things as facts first and foremost. But we have to start at the beginning. The evil landlord part is as much about the condition of the property that you're renting as anything else to start with. So make sure that all of the basics are taken care of. The heat, AC if you have it, the roof, all of the basics are in good working order. And if you have a problem with them, take care of it immediately. Put the processes in place to help your tenant be able to reach out to the repair people directly if that works for you. And if they're reaching out to you, get back to them quickly. I mean, whether it's an emergency situation, the hot water heater is leaking or not working, or something that can be fixed in a week or two. There's a leak in the roof, but there's no rain forecast for the next week. You need to take those things into account and address them. But really getting down to the heart of it is how you deal with and work with your tenant, the relationship that you establish with them. And first and foremost, you have to do it as a professional. And we've talked before about the idea that when you're renting a property, the tenants are screening you just as much as you're screening them. They're going to look at a property and a landlord and decide whether or not they want to live there and have to have that as a part of their life for the next however many years. So the way you treat people from the very first contact is going to make a difference. And your ultimate goal, that whole thing, attract them with honey, not vinegar. You want to do that when you're renting your property, when you're advertising it. The way that you respond to them the very first time you contact them is going to leave an indelible impression on them. So make sure that you're being professional, polite and professional. It's important. It makes a huge difference. And it also sets things up for times to come. If you need to get in to do a repair and you have an adversarial relationship with your tenants because of the very first contact you ever had with them, it's going to make your life more difficult. So when people talk about, customer service, I'm a landlord, I don't have to deal with customer service. Well, really you do. And it's going to make your life so much more difficult if you have set up that adversarial relationship and they don't want to talk to you. You call them and they see on their phone that it's ~EvilŽ Landlord. They don't want to talk to you. They're not going to return your phone call. Whereas if you have a good relationship with them and they look forward to talking to you, or at least don't hesitate when they see your name come up on the phone, then you're going to be able to get the things done that you need to, and you'll be able to get it done and get out of their hair and not have to worry about it or think about it.
Right. And, one of the things that I definitely want to bring up that, it's great customer service for a landlord, assuming that, most people are familiar with technology these days and can rip out an email pretty easily. I've seen a lot of landlords have great success with a simple newsletter, depending on how many properties or units they have. Obviously, for a multi-unit or a community, it might make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very least, a scheduled email, every
Sure.
3 months, every 6 months, just a scheduled email. Hey, how's it going? How's everything in the unit? Is there anything that I can do, or is there anything that you'd like to bring up? Give them that opportunity to have that conversation and that communication. And I think that just shows good follow up on the landlord's part. And I've heard a couple landlords say that they do that and have had great success with it.
Yes. And there are tools that you can use to even help do that. There's a tool I use called Streak, Streak, and it's a free tool. And you can essentially schedule an email. You can schedule it 6 months down the road, and it will automatically be sent out.
I
And
love that idea.
doesn't cost you anything, and you get those things taken care of. You want to send an email every quarter to let them know, these are just checking in, making sure
Hmm.
everything's okay. That's perfect. But at least a couple of times a year, you also want to reach out to them proactively and ask them, how are things at the property? And it's just like asking your kid after school, how was your day?
Right.
If you say, how was your day? Your response is going to be, or their response to you is going to be, fine.
Hmm.
But you want to dig a little bit deeper. You want to ask your child, how was your science class? Did you took a test? How did the test go? Did you do well? Were you comfortable? Dig into the details. We want to do the same thing with our property. You want to ask specific questions, and you can kind of break the property down into different areas of, you've got the mechanicals and you've got the landscaping, um, the paint, the electrical. You can create a list for yourself of all of the different things to ask them, and have a conversation about all of those things.
Yeah.
And the more you talk with them, the more they'll say, oh, I remember. And then you'll get that other little bit of information that will help you take care of the property. And hopefully they understand your goal is to get in and take care of these problems for them so that they're happier. Because when you have a good tenant, you want them to be there as long as possible. You want them to be really happy and comfortable being there without feeling that you're in their hair, bothering you all the time. But at the same time, knowing that when you do call, it's for a specific reason and it makes their life better at the end.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you have a bad situation, like I'd mentioned earlier, this approach is not necessarily. I can imagine a lot of landlords saying this is just opening a can of worms. I'm not going to ask them if there's anything wrong because they're going to tell me everything's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, like we've said before, your screening process should be solid enough that you're weeding out passive aggressive tenants. Um, you should be following up enough so that nothing is really a shock or a surprise. And if anything, if this routine communication uncovers the fact that this person is, you know, hard to deal with, or you don't want to continue dealing with them, then at the end of that lease term, you don't have to continue. And so it can also sort of uncover a lot of hidden problems or future problems that you might be able to get out of the way fast rather than let it fester and turn into something much bigger a year, 2 years down the road when everything just blows up and implodes.
Exactly. And you really want to know the status and state of your property at any given point in time. And if you are an absentee landlord, you just completely never talk to them at all from the time they move in to the time they move out, unless there's a problem or an emergency, then you really don't know. And as a landlord, for me, that's what keeps me up at night, is not knowing. So if I have those regular conversations with them, and sometimes it's just a quick, easy email, like you said, how's it going? Is everything good? And then at least once a year, you want to do your inspection. You want to have that additional contact, and it would make sense to do an annual inspection, and then a in between that, I would say biannual, but it's really in between. So once a
Hmm.
year, you do a physical inspection, and then 6 months later, you just do a conversation inspection where you talk with them about these things and ask them the more detailed questions, pretty much the same types of questions that you're going to ask during your walkthrough inspection. But
Right.
again, the big thing is deal with it from a professional level. Don't let the emotions get in the way. If they say, well, that stain that you painted over, it just looks terrible, and they're starting to be a little bit passive aggressive with you, you need to step back. don't respond in kind and say, well, it's not my problem, it's just a little stain, it's not that big a deal, even if you don't want to fix that or address that, and you have no legal requirement to do it, you can minimize that situation by acknowledging their concern and letting them know that I have all of these other things that I really want to take care of for you. I know that is a problem, and at this time it's not something that I can take care of for you.
Right.
And yeah, they might get upset at you, but you're in that situation. You really want to have your customer service hat on. Think of the times that you've been told no when you're dealing with a business, and how did they do it? When
Right.
did they do it well, and when did they do it not so well? And the not so well part, first and foremost, comes back to the emotion. Keep the emotion out of it. Deal with the facts,
Yep.
not facts to the point of, well, I have no legal requirement to do that, so I'm not going
Right.
to.
Right.
You need to couch it in something a little bit nicer than that. And it can be tough for some people. I understand that, but it's really important, because your ultimate goal, again, is to make it so that they want to be there as long as you want them to be there. And
Right.
that when they leave, they feel a little bit of obligation to you as a business person to be respectful to your property so they don't mess it up when they leave.
Yeah. And again, there's going to be landlords out there that say no way, but again, I stand firm. There are so many good tenants out there that this will definitely appeal to and work with. So again, if you're a landlord, you're not a new landlord, and you've been around long enough and you're having nothing but problems, take a look at how you're running the business, and take a look at you as a landlord, because that might be, we've mentioned this before, a lot of landlords create their own problems. They also seem to attract what they're putting out, so that quality of tenant really, really is important. If you're getting a good quality tenant, everything that we've just talked about, everything that we've just discussed, these are things that are not going to frustrate or aggravate a tenant. These are things, like you said, that's going to be, build that respect, and it just builds that good relationship. I couldn't tell you how many times we've had here. I just had a conversation with a woman the other day who was the tenant, and she was helping the landlord find a new tenant to replace her, because
Wow.
she had such a good relationship with and she was an elderly woman, I think, the landlord, who wasn't very savvy on the computer. So this other tenant said, "Listen, don't worry, I'm going to help you find a new tenant." So imagine, they're out there. Imagine having that relationship with a tenant who's willing to say, "Listen, I'll help you." And those are the people you want to attract. And good customer service is going to not only attract them but keep them.
Without question.
Yeah.
Great, Stephen. I think that about wraps it up. Do you have any other thoughts about customer service as a landlord?
Last piece of advice: keep it professional. Don't give them your Facebook. Don't friend them, and let them intrude on your personal space. And we've mentioned this before too. It's always a good idea to have a property specific email. If you don't want to, you definitely want to keep those barriers up, personal and professional. So it may not be a bad idea to create, 123 Main Street at Gmail. And that anytime that an email comes in, it's from that property. They remember the email very easily then too. They know it's their address. And there's that nice space, that nice distance there where they're not intruding on your personal life.
Yes. And that keeps it as a business. And that's really important. Treat it as a business, treat your tenants as a customer, and try to provide them with the highest level of customer service you possibly can, almost to the point of the customer is always right. But we know that's not always the case. But
Right.
keep that in mind as often as possible. And I think in the long run, it's going to make your life easier as a property owner, as a landlord.
Right. And again, we've made the comparison before, property management companies don't stress out over evictions because they have no emotional attachment to it. It's part of the process. But the one thing that you'll never see them do is just completely lose their mind and send out a bad email that says, well, you're this, and you can go here. They keep that professional level, and that's how you maintain your own sanity as a landlord, is keeping it professional. Don't allow yourself to get emotionally engaged. Even if you do have a bad tenant situation, keep it professional, keep that customer service in mind, because then you can move on and find a better tenant eventually that will appreciate that too.
Exactly. Well, great, Stephen. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking with you tomorrow evening.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to Landlord University, and remember to visit rentprep.com/landlordu to see show notes and access free resources like forms and guides. And be sure to check out Jeff Pearson hosting his own hit podcast at thementorimpact.com.